Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you back to the workroom. Melissa here from Being Cozy Stitching, and I'd like to give a huge welcome and shout out to the Material Girls of Sauk County. I want to thank you, ladies, for joining me this morning. I'm so glad to have you, and I'm really, really looking forward to today's project. It's something very near and dear to my heart. I do many of them in many different ways, and I can't wait to show you how this all comes along. So, I have my cup of coffee. I have my project in my head. I've got a project all planned out. And now that you're here, we can go ahead and get started. Now, you all know that I love scraps and I like to make scrap quilts. I'm going to put this down before I spill it because that would really be a mess. But anyway, we all know that I really, really enjoy scraps. So I'm always looking for the scrap projects. But what do you do if you don't have any scraps? Believe it or not, you're out there. I'm not one of you, but you're out there. Or maybe you're just a beginning quilter, and you don't have a lot of stash yet, and you don't have a lot of stuff put together or saved or left over or haven't done that many projects. Whatever the reason, you don't have a lot of scraps. So what do you do when you want to do a scrap project and you don't have any scraps? Well, I'm here to tell you about the jelly roll. And no, not the bakery goodie. Although that would be good too, but not in a quilt. That'd be a little mushy. But anyway, a jelly roll is this fantastic grouping of fabrics that are cut 2.5 inches wide, and they run the width of the fabric. So they're going to be about anywhere between 42 and 44 inches wide, just enough to give you variety and stuff to work with. So remember, the jelly roll's usually going to have about one of each of the fabrics that were made for the line of fabrics designed. Sometimes they have multiples. It just depends on the designer and the company putting it out. Moda, who coined the phrase jelly roll, they were one of the first people to offer these pre-cuts of fabric. They normally put together 40 strips of fabric. And so if the designer only makes 28 or 30 different ones, they make up the difference with either giving you repeats or throwing in some blenders in order to make that roll reach the 40 strips. But this isn't an industry standard, and it doesn't always hold true. Now, Island Boutiques, they call theirs Island strips, and Hoffman Fabric calls theirs Bally Pops and Bally Poppies. Now, the difference between the pop and the poppy, a pop has 40 strips and a poppy has 20. Now, there's also Tonga and Tonga Treats, Tonga Treat Junior. Again, you've got your 40 strips versus your 20 strips. And my very most favorite of them all, Riley Blake puts theirs together and they call them roly-polies. I think that is so cute and so adorable. It makes me want to buy the fabric just from the name alone. But you really need to be careful and read the labels on the jelly rolls. Find out how many strips are included, because they are going to vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. They're all called something different. 9 times out of 10, everybody just calls them jelly rolls. Sorry, everybody, but they do. But it's going to give you variety and different colors and choices and small bits of fabric that you can use in many different ways. There are a ton of quilting patterns designed using these little lovelies, and today is no exception. I'm going to show you a cute little trick on how to use your 2.5-inch strips to come up with a quick and easy quilt, one that can be made in no time at all. Now, because I have lots and lots of scraps, I've pretty much cut my own jelly roll, and I've made mine a yellow theme. And I have several different fabrics, and I'm sorry for how squishy this turned out. But as you can see, There's lots and lots of different colors in here, or different textures in here with the yellows and the whites, and it should be a really pretty quilt. I'm pretty excited about that. So to get us started and get us going, you want to go ahead and open up your jelly rolls, because you have jelly rolls, remember, or you have scraps like me, and whatever the case may be, go ahead and get those opened up. And what I'd like you to do is grab 2 strips. Doesn't matter which ones they are, doesn't matter where they come out of the pile, doesn't matter if they're the same color or they're next to each other. It really doesn't matter, because by the time that we're done, they're going to get so scrambled up in the quilt that they may not even be next to each other anyway. It just depends on how it all falls. And no matter how hard you try, you just can't plan this quilt out. It just doesn't plan. So in order to get started, you're going to need between 20 and 40 2.5 inch by the width of the fabric strips. And you're going to bust that open, and you're going to take 2 of your strips with the long sides together, or right sides together. I'm sorry, not the long sides, the right sides. With your right sides together, you're going to sew 1/4 inch across the end here. Now I haven't cut my salvages off yet. I do that at the end. So I start down right at the end of the selvage, and then I do my 1/4 inch, and then I can just cut that off when I'm done. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and sew your 1/4 inch across the short end of 2 of your jelly roll strips. And when that's done, you're going to open that up. You're going to select another jelly roll strip from your bundle. You're going to place these right sides together, and you're going to repeat the process. You're going to sew another 1/4 inch seam across, and then you're going to open it back up again. You're going to select another strip. Remember, you want to keep these right sides together. What we're trying to do is create one very long piece of fabric. It's going to go for miles and miles and miles. And it's going to drive you crazy. Well, I promise it's going to be really cute when it's done. So what I want you to do is keep repeating the process until you get to the point where all of the strips in your jelly roll are all connected together, or your scrap pile, whichever you prefer to do. And once they're all sewn together, then we can go on to the next step. Now, because we're trying to keep this to a minimum here, and not bore you to tears, because this process keeps repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. Once you get to the point where, imagine that, I had a sample to show you, and it just picked up its little legs and disappeared and walked away, by golly. Okay, so once you have all your strips together and you have this great big long piece of fabric, what I want you to do is I want you to find the beginning and the end. No matter what's in between, I want you to find the beginning and the end. And then what I'd like you to do is I would like you to put right sides together, just like we did when we connected them. But this time, instead of sewing across the short side, I would like you to sew 1/4 inch down the long side. And I would like you to continue sewing down the side until you reach the very, very, very end. Now, this is going to take some time, so you might want to put in your favorite Netflix video or YouTube video. Trust me, you'll get through quite a few of them before you get done. This part takes a long time, and it's kind of boring, because you're just sewing and sewing and sewing and sewing and sewing. Then once you get to the end, you're going to see that you have this fold. And what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to put your scissors right in there, right in between there. And I would like you to cut. So now the fabric isn't just folded, it's 2 separate pieces. Then go ahead and just sew right off the end of the fabric strip. And once you have that done, then what I'd like you to do is open that strip set up, because now you've got 2 of them. And I'd like you to bring the other end up, because you'll have 2 on that end as well. And when you bring that up, then I would like, when you fold that in half, in other words. Fold it in half and bring it up. Then again, repeat the process. I want you to sew a 1/4 of an inch seam all the way down to the end. And when you get to the end, you're going to have that fold again. Only this time it's going to go across 2 strips. And what I want you to do is cut right straight across both sets of strips so that it opens up and it lays flat, and then sew off the end of that. Now, what do you do if you get to the end and it's all twisted and turned and just a mess? Just a mess down there. Don't worry about that. Straighten it as far as you can straighten. Grab your scissors and cut it. Take the piece that's all messed up, put it in the scrap pile for next time, and keep on going. No matter how many times it happens to you, don't worry about it. It's not going to be a problem. Now, you're going to repeat this process depending on your strips. It may be anywhere from 4 to 7 times. And each time that you do it, each time you fold the quilt in half, sew down the long side, cut it apart, open it up, fold it in half, stitch it, cut it, open it. You'll continue this process until the quilt reaches a size that you're happy with. Now, I can't tell you what that size is going to be because it's going to depend on how many strips you've chosen to use in the project. Now, sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. That's up to you. But when it opens up and it's a size that you like or think that you can work with, now don't worry if it's too long or if it's too short, because we can trim it if it's long, we can add borders if it's short, and build it out to where we need it to be. You just want to get that generally to the size that you're looking for. So when you reach that point, then you're going to have something that looks like this. And then it's going to be up to you on whether you want to add borders or not. Now, borders finish off the project really, really nicely. So it might be something that you want to do. And again, the size depends on what size you're looking for to be finished with, what size you need or want to give away when the project's all said and done. For me, I had 2 pieces of fabric that matched what I was doing here, and I wanted to use it all up in the quilt. I'll try and give you more visuals so you can see more and more and more of it. So the size of my borders ended up being however many, strips I needed to cut that could accommodate the size of this quilt. And it's a pretty good lap size quilt. And I want to say I probably have about 22 strips in here, give or take. But anyway, it's up to you to decide whether you want to put a border on it or you don't want to put a border on it. Now, if you don't want to put a border on it, what you end up with is something that looks kind of like this purple beast here, where the edges just kind of end, and then you'll end up putting a binding on it and finishing it off with the binding. Now, I will give you a shot so that you can take a look at these quilts and see their full glory, if you will, because it's kind of hard to see when I'm sitting here showing you quick. But when you leave the edges raw and you go ahead to put a binding on, then you end up with something, oh, that's kind of a boring part. Let's go over here. You end up with something that looks a little bit something like this. So you can see it finishes off very, very nicely, whether you add a border or you don't. And I've done it both ways, and I like it either way. Either way looks lovely. Really, really lovely. So the choice is up to you which way you want to finish it off. I lost my train of thought. Isn't that terrible? I hate this part of life. Anyway, so the process is simple, pretty easy. You keep repeating itself until you get to the size that you want. And then when you're at the size you want, you just put your borders on if you want them. Finish it off if you don't. Quilt it any way you desire. And you have yourself a quilt top. And the most beautiful part about it is it uses up so many different scraps. It isn't funny. Now, my little tip or piece of information that I would like to share with you, don't be afraid to cut up your strips into smaller sizes and then sew the smaller sizes together. I think it adds so much more interest when you have littler bits of fabric versus the great big wide long pieces. The long pieces are in here and they're lovely, but then I have a lot of little pieces in here, and I think the little pieces add more interest because it keeps changing the colors as you go along. Now, some of that you're not going to have any control over. It's going to depend on where your strips end. You really can't plan this quilt, so you just kind of have to go with it. Just go with the flow. But anyway, when you're all done and you have it all quilted, then you have a lovely gift you can give away or keep or use or whatever you would like to do with it. I hope you've enjoyed this lovely little tutorial on how quick and easy it is to use up your scraps or to purchase pre-cut scraps, if you will, and make it into something fun, fast, and easy. And next week, if you tune in, I'm going to show you how you can cut this apart and make it even more special and personalize this gift, this quilt towards the person you're gifting it to, or for yourself or for your personal needs, whatever. But we'll take a bash at it, we'll cut it apart, rearrange it, and make it something special. So be sure to tune in next week. And remember, if you like this video, please hit the like button down below, and don't be afraid to subscribe to us, because we've got lots and lots of fun, fast, and easy little quick scrap projects coming your way. So, thanks for sharing your coffee with me this morning. I'm really glad you're here. Thanks so much. Happy stitching.